Oh, nearly a round of applause. Who would have thought it? Thank you very much. Thank you. So can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so welcome. So today we're here to talk about global financial well-being. So I think one of the reasons why we're all here today is that accelerated by COVID, well-being has gone from being a nice-to-have offer for your people to being a must-have, and really often seen by leading companies now as being mission critical. And one of the things that we're finding is that actually organisations are wanting to take a global approach to this, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So we commissioned what we think is the most comprehensive study into global state of financial well-being, behaviours, attitudes, aspirations of people around the world, which we're calling Disrupting Money Habits. So just firstly to take you through the methodology. So we commissioned census-wide to survey 11,500 people. Those people are workers around the world. And what you can see here on this map is the number of people in each country that were surveyed. And what we also made sure we did was that we had a representative sample both on age, gender, ethnicity, and earnings as well. So hopefully the data is going to be very, very good quality for you. And you can download this report from our website. It's all free of charge. So one of the things that really came out of this is the fact that there's a lot of inequality out there. And actually what we're seeing is that 49% of people around the world are feeling excluded from the financial ecosystem. And bearing in mind these are people who work for largely multinational corporations, when you dig deeper, you can imagine that that statistic would actually be higher outside of those multinational working organisation groups. So a lot of people are saying, right, well, our company is really focused on diversity and inclusion. And what I would urge you to do is actually think about financial well-being as being a brilliant way of being able to support your diversity and inclusion agenda. So what comes loud and clear from the report is that young people, women, those people from minority ethnic backgrounds are those people that are struggling the most. So just kind of hold that thought as we go through. And what we're also seeing is that 53% of people believe that access to wealth is unfair. Now, one of the things that really comes out loud and clear, I think, in this study is North America, and particularly the US, that there's a real end of empire feel. And actually, if you think about it, with America being the land of the American dream, where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed, one of the worrying trends that comes out of this is that people in the US in particular are feeling hopeless. And you can see here that even 50% of people in the land of the American dream are feeling that access to wealth is unfair. Now, there's a real gap when it comes to financial literacy. And what you're seeing here is that 13%, only 13% of people have received financial education in the school. And what was particularly striking for me is if you have a look at the bottom line here, that's particularly prominent in EMEA and mainland Europe, whereas actually what you're seeing in emerging economies is a much higher proportion of people who are receiving some kind of financial education in the school. What I should also point out, though, is that the figures are dramatically different for those people from higher wealth groups. So people who are earning more were significantly more likely to receive financial education in school versus lower earning groups. Now, I know we've got some people working for tech companies in this room, so I'm fully respectful of your business model and what I'm about to say, but what this is showing you is the percentage of people in different countries who are reliant on YouTube and TikTok for their financial education. And I almost couldn't believe this when I saw it. So if you see there, 52% of people in Brazil and 51% of people in India are reliant on TikTok and YouTube for their financial education. And what we're actually seeing here is the age bands where that's most prevalent, with the most significant group being between the age of 25 and 34, but really that whole younger cohort, 44 years and younger, are heavily reliant on those platforms for their financial education. And what you're seeing here is that that's most prominent in Latin America, but there are also high proportions of people across EMEA, APAC, and North America as well. Then what we're seeing here is the percentage of people who are saying that they're influenced in their financial decisions from social media platforms. So overall 16%, but you can see here that there's a significant number of those people in APAC. And then what we can see here is country by country, the percentage of people who are influenced for their financial decision making by social media, with the highest being China, and then bottom right, lowest being Italy. Now, what I think is quite interesting about this is that at least people are wanting to go and get support, but it's just maybe the channels aren't there for them to be able to receive the support. So they're not getting it through government agencies like the education system. They're not getting it through financial institutions who, since 2008, there's been a chronic mistrust of financial institutions, according to the Edelman Trust Index. And so they're looking for alternative sources for financial information in order to be able to make plans for themselves. What we're seeing here is that nearly 75% of people are reliant on hand-me-down information from their parents and family members for their financial information. And I don't know about you, but my mum and dad weren't financial experts. And so to a certain extent, what this means is that we're repeating cycles of exclusion, because if you're following what your parents did, you're following good habits, yes, in some cases, but average or bad habits in many other cases. What we're also seeing here, and this is really striking for me, is that really over the last 100 years, it's almost been our God-given right that we become wealthier than our parents. But actually, what we're seeing here is that maybe we've reached the apex with the baby boomer generation, and there's a bit of a downward slide. So again, just picking on America, just because I think this is an extraordinary statistic, it's saying only 47% of Americans think that they're going to be exceeding their parents' wealth. And then that's going all the way down to Italy, where only 30% of people think that they're going to be exceeding their parents' wealth. Interestingly, and I talked about that kind of, we're living in those times, aren't we, where big macroeconomic shifts are happening, and you're really right. When does the US kind of pivot to China? And a lot of this data is showing that it's happening already, because you can see here that in APAC, and particularly you can see here in India and China, those emerging nations where people are much more confident and comfortable that they can be exceeding their parents' wealth, whereas there is that sense of decline, particularly in the US, but also mainland Europe as well. This one I thought was interesting, because I think that there's a real divergence between what employees want and what employers believe they're offering. So what this is showing you is that the highest proportion of people said that their main motivator for financial success is having money makes life easier for their loved ones. And yet what you're seeing here is the percentage of people who say that their employers are unaware of who they are supporting, with the highest number being Nigeria, lowest number being India. But I thought that was really interesting, that you've got this kind of overwhelming aspiration from the employee, and yet the employer, for reasons, who knows, GDPR could be a reason, there could be other reasons of, is this my business or not, that employers are not taking the time to actually understand what's important to employees with regards to aspirations. And then what this is showing me is that I see this as being negative. This is the percentage of people in different regions who are saying that the most important thing for them with regards to earning more money or getting ahead with their financial well-being is that it gives them more power and prestige. And for me, this is a negative because it's about people feeling that sense of anxiety and hopelessness with today's system, and therefore thinking that it's only through having more money that they have the power and prestige to be able to influence matters. And that's particularly prevalent in APAC, as you can see there. People are anxious, and what you're seeing here is the percentage of people, both by country, but also by region, who are currently feeling anxious about their money. So just out of interest, how many people here look after LATAM for your people? Okay, so I found it really fascinating because a lot of the, what you would expect to come through with regards to characteristics have come through, because what you'll see here is that the Brazilians are both the most anxious, but then we'll see on the next slide they're also the most hopeful as well. So there's a lot of interesting kind of conflict that you see in the, emotions that are being displayed in the answers here from Latin America. And then what this is showing you, I mentioned at the beginning about diversity and inclusion. What this is showing you is the number or percentage of people in different groups who feel like the deck is stacked against them. And you can see there that there's a higher proportion of women, that there's a higher proportion of people from ethnic backgrounds, or minority ethnic backgrounds, I should say. And then what you're seeing there is by age, that the highest proportion are youngest people, the 18 to 24 group, which is then tailing right off in that towards that end of Generation X and baby boomer. Okay, but as I mentioned, hope connects us. And you can see here that 73% of people in LATAM actually feel still hopeful about their financial situation. But you know, what is hope? Is hope concrete? Is it actually real? Debate to discuss. But what you're seeing also is that the percentage of people who feel hope, it's also predicated on income. So 73% of people on high income are feeling hope for the future versus 55% of low income. Still a high number, but there's a significant difference there. Then I found this quite depressing. I'm really sorry to be depressing on a Thursday, but this is the percentage of people, 55%, whose financial aspiration is simply having enough money for bills at the moment. And that's, for me, deeply concerning. And you can see that by country as well. And again, the US, it will really stick out, I think, in the next slide. Again, really struck me that where are those aspirations about things like home ownership and having a family and the things that maybe you would automatically assume that people have as financial aspirations. They were definitely there on the list for people to select, but people's aspiration there is simply having enough money to pay for bills. And these are people who work for multinationals. And then I put North America out there on the limb because there are other people on the hopeful scale who are saying, yep, owning a home, that's my aspiration. But North America, it really stuck out like a sore thumb that 58%, it's simply enough money to pay for bills. Then what this is showing you is the difference between having retirement as a financial goal, which is in black, versus red, financial confidence in your retirement. So basically, the longer the red line, the more positive these statistics are. So you can see here in China, I don't know if you know this, but on average in China, people save 30% of their pay each month. That's the average. Whereas in Europe in particular and North America, we have a culture of we spend more than we earn each month. So essentially, on average, people become more indebted each month, and that's something that we fundamentally need to change. And you can see that coming across if you look at places like Ireland, Germany, for example, where the red bar is smaller than the black bar, as in people have very, very little confidence in retirement outcomes. So moving on to the employer. So we asked the question, does my employer care about my financial aspirations? And what you're seeing here is that people start off really confident about their employer, and then second guessing the results here, maybe as people are approaching retirement and they're starting to panic, they're actually thinking, no, my employer doesn't care about my aspirations. But again, there's a difference between income bands here, where people with higher incomes are more likely to say that my employer cares. But when people feel that their employer cares, some wonderful things happen. So people who believe that are 4 times more likely to feel pride and contentment. They're 2 times more likely to feel hopeful about their financial situation, and they are 27% more likely to feel prepared for retirement. So I think that just goes to show the power, when you're talking about a financial wellbeing program for your people, of illustrating that you care actually has profound impacts on sentiments which must, by logic, lead through into engagement. Yeah. So we had a bit of fun to kind of finish off on the stats with what would make, in our opinion, the ultimate financially well human if you were to take what we see as being the most positive characteristics from around the world. And what we picked out was Indian positivity, South African confidence, Brazilian pride, Chinese foresight, Nigerian family values, Irish self-worth, Argentinian ambition, Canadian well-being, German lack of power hunger, and American employer support. So just something to think about when you're thinking about your global workforce, about some of the characteristics that they display that can help you engage with them on these kind of programs. So on to the programs itself. So I think it's fair to say that global financial wellbeing programs are absolutely at the bleeding edge of HR, let alone benefits, let alone well-being. And I've been working global benefits now for 20 years, and I genuinely believe that this is one of the most interesting, even fascinating and rewarding programs that you can deliver for your people. How do you deal with the local nuances? For example, in United Arab Emirates, debt can be a criminal matter. In Japan, there is no concept of credit score. There's some really interesting stuff out there and in order to deliver a best-in-class program, the 3 things that we would ask you to consider are, number 1, how you can use these programs to grow uptake and engagement with your existing programs, getting more return on investment from your existing spend, things like your stock plan, your retirement plans, your open enrollment benefits. Number 2, it's around a globally consistent experience, making sure that your people, wherever they are enjoying the same level of employee experience. And thirdly, and I think this is probably the most exciting thing for reward leaders, is having one global set of management information so that you can see how your people are utilising a program in India, say, versus Poland versus Australia, enabling you to make evidence-based decisions on the future of your strategy. So that was what I was going to say today. We've got a couple of our guys, Wendy and Ben, who are on stand 3, so please do feel free to come and speak to them about global financial wellbeing. It would be remiss of me to say that at Nudge now we're in 60 countries, and I believe that we'll be in 100 countries over the next year. So, this is really, really exciting times. And I know a few people in the audience have already done this, and thank you, and others are in the process of looking at it. And I'd welcome any questions. Thank you.